he is actually a really good coach, but the ownership, they're not really giving him nothing to work with. What up, though? This your boy Motor Socially Conscious One, back at you again with another video. If this is your first time stopping by my channel, please hit that subscribe button. And I promise you I'm going to hit you up with that fire content. If you're returning back to my channel, thank you for that support, and I definitely appreciate it. Please subscribe to your boy if you haven't. Now, what we're going to talk about is that NFC East Division. And we all know the 4 teams who are in that division because that division is one of our favorite divisions in the NFC. Correction, the NFL, I should say. When I say that, the air quotes go up. Excuse me. Now, with that being said, I already spilled about the AFC West, the NFC West, NFC North, AFC North, AFC South. My last video was NFC South. Now I'm about to hit you up with that NFC East. And I'm just going to talk about those 4 certain teams in that division. And without further ado, let's get started. First off, we had the Dallas Cowboys, also known as them boys, where Mike McCarthy is the head coach. He is heading into his 5th season. This season, he starts off on a hot seat. And the quarterback, we all know who the quarterback is. That man's name is Dak Prescott. And he is entering into his umpteenth season as a Cowboy. It's over 5 years. I don't know offhand. Excuse me. And we also have Cooper Rush and Trey Lance. Those are his backups. Running back, we have Ezekiel Elliott-Slayton, as he is back for his 2nd stint with the Cowboys. And his backup will be Royce Freeman. And the wide receiver, we have CeeDee Lamb. He is one of the league's best wide receivers. And you also have Brandon Cooks on the outside, on the opposite side of him. And also you have the tight end Jake Ferguson. Now the Cowboys, I will admit, they do have a trio of good tight ends to go along with Ferguson. You also have Luke Schoonmaker, and you also have Peyton Hendershot. Kind of think about it, those are a trio of Big Ten tight ends. Wisconsin, Michigan, Indiana. Shout out to the Big Ten on that. Now on to the O-line. The O-line, you have the right guard Zach Martin and the left tackle Tyler Guyton. Now let's go to the D-line. D-line should be pretty decent. You still got DeMarcus Lawrence, and you have Micah Parsons. They're both edge rushers, 2 of the best in the game, I might add, when they're on. Micah been on, DeMarcus when he's on. He's good as the rest of them. You also have the defensive tackle Mozzie Smith, who is entering into his 2nd season. And the linebacker position, they have signed Eric Kendricks during the offseason. And also, they have drafted a good linebacker for Notre Dame, Maris Liufau. And in the secondary position, Deron Bland, he's going to be out 6 to 8 weeks. And Trayvon Diggs, he is returning from injury. And they also have safety Malik Hooker and nickelback Jordan Lewis. The other draft picks include edge rusher Marshawn Nealon from Western Michigan and the guard Cooper Beebe from Kansas State. Let's talk about their games. They start off week 1 on the road in Cleveland against the Browns. Week 2, they have a home opener versus the Saints. Week 3, they have a home game versus the Baltimore Ravens. And a week 4 road division matchup in New Jersey at the Giants to cap out the first 4 weeks. The next 4 weeks include a home game versus the Steelers, another home game versus the Lions, my Lions. We still got fire in our eye from what happened last year. I digress. And then after that game, they have a bye week for week 7. And then they have a road trip to the Bay to battle the Niners. Wow. Good thing that bye week came in time. Now, weeks 9 through 12 involves the second of a back-to-back roadie with a week 9 road game in the ATL versus the Falcons. And then after that, they have back-to-back home games, starting with the division matchup with the Eagles for week 10 and the Lone Star Showdown for week 11 versus the Texans as they travel north on Interstate 45 to battle the Cowboys in Arlington. In a road division clash in the nation's capital to take on the Commanders. And their final 6 games include back-to-back home games, a week 13 division battle versus the Giants, and a week 14 battle when Joe Burrow and the Bengals come calling into Jerry's world. And then the rest of the way, they alternate home and road games. The rest of the way, week 15 on the road against Carolina, week 16 versus Tampa Bay, a potential week 17 showdown in Philly against the Eagles, with possible NFC East implications on the line, I may add. And they close out at home versus the Commanders, and another NFC East game that may have implications as well. Will they repeat as NFC East champions? Stay tuned. Next team on the list are the Philadelphia Eagles, where Nick Sirianni is the head coach, who is entering into his 4th season on the sideline, and they are looking for a bounce back season after the year before going to the Super Bowl. And his quarterback will be Jalen Hurts, and he is coming back trying to bounce back from the season that he had. Well, the end of the season that he had didn't end so well for them, and the quarterback that will be backing him up this year, rather, will be none other than Kenny Pickett. He was the former Steelers quarterback who was traded to the Eagles during the offseason. At the running back position, they got upgraded. They have gotten an upgrade, I should say, in Saquon Barkley, and he signed during the offseason as well. And the backup to him will be Kenneth Gainwell. And the wide receiver, they have one of the best wide receiver cores in the game, and A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. And they recently picked up Jahan Dotson. And on paper, it looks like one of the best wide receiver trios on paper, not going front. And they also have signed Paris Campbell. He is a speedster. And the tight end is the reliable Dallas Goedert. And let's talk about the O-line. We cannot front on their O-line. The O-line is stacked and one of the best O-lines in all the league. And even though Jason Kelsey has retired, they still have Lane Johnson, the right tackle, the outstanding right tackle, and the outstanding left guard, Landon Dickerson. And they also signed former Jets offensive tackle Mekhi Becton. Now let's talk about their defense, their front 7. Nose tackle Jordan Davis. He just got his feet wet last year. This is his 2nd season. I'm expecting big things from that young fella. And you also got the vet within the front 7, Brandon Graham, the weak side linebacker, technically. And they also signed Josh Sweat. He's the strong side linebacker for that front 7. Now let's talk about their secondary. Secondary, one of the best in the game as well, with Darius Slade Jr. And they have safeties Avonte Maddox. Shout out to him, fellow Martin Luther King Crusader alum. And they also re-signed C.J. Gardner-Johnson. He is in his 2nd stint after spending a year with the Lions. And they also have James Bradbury IV. Their draft picks include the outstanding cornerback Quinyon Mitchell from Toledo, the left guard Trevor Keegan from Michigan, and the cornerback Cooper DeJean, another outstanding corner from Iowa. He would have been a higher pick. However, his season ended due to an injury. I hate it for him. But nonetheless, looks like the Eagles, their secondary looks pretty nice. And let's talk about their games. The week 1, they have a game in Brazil versus the Packers in Sao Paulo. And they come back home for week 2 to open up at the Link versus the Falcons. That's followed by back-to-back road games against NFC South teams. Week 3 will be in the Big Easy against the Saints, and week 4 will be in Tampa Bay against the Bucks. Then the Eagles will have a bye week for week 5, while weeks 6 through 8 features a home tilt with the Browns for week 6 and back-to-back road games, with the division game at the Giants in week 8 will be in Cincy to battle the Bengals. And weeks 9 through 12 will have Philly alternate home and away games, with home games with Jacksonville week 9, a division road game in Jerry's World against the Cowboys for week 10, versus Washington division home game for week 11, and they're on the road against the Rams at SoFi for week 12. And their final 6 games will have the Eagles for 4 of those 6 weeks, with weeks 13 and 16 on the road. Week 13 home game. I'm correction. Week 13, I just said that was a road game. That road game happens to be in Baltimore against the Ravens. Week 14, they're back home versus the Panthers. Week 15, they're home versus the Steelers. Week 16, they're in the nation capital for a division road game versus the Commanders. Week 17, and that could, like I said, with the Cowboys, that could have implications. And week 18, they close out the season at home versus the Giants. Will we actually see a bounce back season from Philly? We shall see. Next up are the New York Giants, and they have as their head coach Brian Daboll, who some also thinks is entering the season on a hot seat. This is just his third year, by the way, and his quarterback, unfortunately, is Daniel Jones, and this is his more than fifth season in the league. I believe this is his fifth or sixth. Who knows? And his backups are Drew Lock and and Tommy DeVito. And Tommy DeVito has some playing time last year, so he does have experience just in case. And the running backs is Devin Singletary, and they did draft Tyrone Tracy Jr. out of Purdue. The wide receivers, Darius Slayton and Wandale Robinson, and they also signed Allen Robinson II, and they also drafted Malik Neighbors with the first round pick. The tight end is Daniel Bellinger, and the O line is led by Andrew Thomas, the left tackle. He is pretty stout. And they also signed left guard John Runyon Jr. during the offseason. And they still do have the right tackle Evan Neal on the right side of that anchor. And their defense. The D line starting with Kayvon Thibodeau, a nice edge rusher. He is a real nice stout edge rusher. He's turned out to be. And they also got the D lineman Dexter Lawrence II. Now they did sign Brian Burns. That's a sign that I do like. Linebacker, they do have Micah McFadden. And the secondary is pretty young. They do have young cornerbacks, Deontay Banks and Cordell Flott. And their safety is Jason Pinnock. And other draft picks include the safety Tyler Nubin out of Minnesota and a nickelback Andrew Phillips out of Kentucky. Now let's move to their games. Their games include a week 1 home game versus the Vikings, and then they have a back-to-back road games at the Commanders in DC and at Cleveland week 3 versus the Browns. And then they have a division home game versus the Cowboys. The next 4 games include a road trip to the Pacific Northwest to battle the Seahawks for week 5. Then they come back home to Jersey for back-to-back home games, starting with the home game versus the Bengals in week 6, and then the division home game versus the Eagles. Then they have a road game at Pittsburgh against the Steelers. Weeks 9 through 13 will see the Giants at home for the most part, starting with the divisional home clash in week 9 versus Washington, followed by a home game versus the Panthers the next week. And then after that, it's a bye week for week 11. Then they get a visit from the Bucks in week 12. Then they go on the road for Thanksgiving to tangle with the Cowboys in Arlington. The last 5 games will be a home game versus the Saints. That's followed by the Giants hosting the Ravens in week 15. That's part of a back-to-back. And then they have a trip to the ATL in week 16 against the Falcons, a home game versus the Indianapolis Colts. Then they'll close out the season on the road at the Link against the Eagles. Last but not least, we do have the Washington Commanders, and their head coach is Dan Quinn, as he is taking over the head coaching duty for Ron Rivera, who was fired at the last season. And at the quarterback position, they will have a new quarterback as Jaden Daniels take over the signal calling duties for the Commanders as he replaces Sam Howell. And Jaden Daniels, as you know, he was drafted with the number 2 pick. The number 2 pick in this year's draft. And his backup will be Marcus Mariota, who is also a former Heisman Trophy winner. At the running back position, they will still have Brian Robinson Jr. He returns as the top running back for the Commanders, and his backup will be Austin Eckler, and he is coming over from the LA Chargers. He signed during his offseason after being let go. And at the wide receiver position, they still have Terry McLaurin, and they still have De'Ami Brown. And although they lost Curtis Samuel through free agency, they did draft Christian McCaffrey's baby brother, Luke, from Rice. And at the tight end position, they have somehow convinced Zach Ertz to come out of retirement, and he will be the tight end for the Commanders. The O-line is young, but they're improving. They do have the right guard, Sam Cosmi, and they signed left guard Nick Allegretti, and they also signed Tyler Biadasz. If I'm wrong on his name, let me know. And they also drafted left tackle Brandon Coleman to be a future anchor. And their defense is decent. They do have edge Cleveland Farrell, and they also still have Deron Payne, who is a top D lineman in the league. as well as Jonathan Allen. Linebackers, they signed Bobby Wagner. He is a respected veteran among linebackers. And they also signed Dante Fowler Jr. in their secondary. And they still have Benjamin St. Juste. And they also drafted Mike Samuels still. And he was drafted from Michigan as he was instrumental in helping them win the Natty. And now let's talk about their games. Week 1, they have a road trip to Tampa to face the Bucks. Then the Commanders come home for their home opener in Week 2 versus the Giants in the early division home game. Then it's back-to-back roadies, starting with the Monday nighter in Week 3 in Cincy against the Bengals, followed by a game against the Cardinals in Week 4 in the desert. The next 4 games involve a home game versus the Browns, followed by a road trip up the road Interstate 95 corridor to face the Ravens in Week 6 at M&T. Then they'll be back home for back-to-back home games where they host the Panthers Week 7. And whoa, hold up, hold up, hold up, hold up. It just dawned on me. I'm sorry I stopped the preview, but this just really dawned on me. It dawned on me. You know something? My bad about that, but what dawned on me was that Week 8, you will have the first 2 draft picks of this year's draft, the top 2 quarterbacks. And not only that, the last 2 Heisman Trophy winners when Caleb Williams come to the nation capital to visit Jaden Daniels, and the Bears play the Commanders for Week 8, which should be a very interesting game. Now, weeks 9 through 14 includes a division road game in New Jersey against the New York Giants. Week 10 home game versus the Steelers. Week 11 road game, a division road game at that, against the Eagles at the Link. Then back-to-back home game before that bye week in Week 14. A home division battle versus Dallas in Week 12, followed by a visit from the Titans in Week 13. And their last 4 games are road game in the NO against the Saints, back-to-back home games versus the Eagles in the division game. Week 16 could have NFC East implications. Week 17, they're home versus the Falcons. Then they close out the year on the road at the Cowboys. What may be another NFC East implicated game that may have playoff implications. And how will the Commanders do this year under Dan Quinn the first year? Stay tuned. Now, after running down the NFC East Division, here are my predictions for the season. And just like the NFC South, to where I have a different division winner, I have a different division winner for the NFC East. And guess what? I do not see the Cowboys repeating as NFC East champions. In fact, that honor will go to the Philadelphia Eagles. And I have them winning 11 games, losing 6, 11-6 range, maybe 12-5. Second place, I actually have a tie. The Dallas Cowboys, they'll finish around 10-7. Maybe they can get to 11-6, but I'm sticking with 10-7 till otherwise. And they will be tied with the Washington Commanders, which I also have them finishing 10-7. They could possibly get to 11-6 as well. They can go as low as 9-8. I could see them making a run at the end of the season. Look, this is not Dan Quinn's first time go around as being the head coach. He done this before. He got the Falcons to the Super Bowl. He know what he doing. He got good staff in Washington. He should make things happen. And also that new ownership, they gone away from the shithead owner. Excuse my French. We all know Dan Snyder was boo-boo. And last but not least, I have the New York Giants. I have them finishing around 6-11. Maybe they can get to 7-10. Who knows? And it sucks because Brian Daboll, he is actually a really good coach, but the ownership, they're not really giving him nothing to work with Daniel Jones. And I hate he might have to lose a job, might end up getting a pink slip as a result. You know how things go in the NFL. But I do not see the Giants going above any of the other three teams or making a run just as long as Daniel Jones is their quarterback. Hey, that's all I got. Stay tuned for the AFC East rundown, and also stay tuned for my college preview. You're going to love that one as well. And also be on the lookout for my high school rundown video for those who like high school football. Until next time, I'm about to get up out of here and get ready for my day job. I'm gone.